Um, Good morning, all. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to come back home. And today I'm talking about Stephen King's Christine. I don't know if you know the novel. It's a novel from 1983 with a film adaptation by John Carpenter from the same year. I'll be dissectionating the novel, and I will use some images from the movie. But I won't talk about the movie. Later on, if you want, we could talk about the movie. So, Stephen King's Christine is the gothic love story of a teenager with his haunted, come-to-life vintage car. The novel is part of a group of stories by this author that deals with the victimization of society by machines. For example, from a Buick 8, or Cell, or Trucks. Truck is a short story, but anyway. The dystopian branch of literary science fiction, in which machines are our enemies, has a long tradition and finds in Gothic literature a perfect ally to turn the utopian vision of science, progress, and technology into something threatening and unfamiliar. What is more, we can say that both in science fiction and Gothic literature, machines are alive and generally gendered to symbolize our loss of humanity. Paradoxically, in the novel Christine, Stephen King uses a car, the symbol of progress during the 20th century in Western culture, to offer a chilling narrative about the dark side of masculinity, about how women bring and sometimes destroy manhood, and to fatally associate masculinity with possession to the point that what you own possesses you. In short, the novel presents us competing forces, telling us what it means to be a man, telling us that masculinity is something that must be constantly demonstrated, and showing us the fatal consequences of that battle. Christine is it's there in the photograph. It's from the movie. Christine is a 1958 Plymouth Fury, an excessive automobile that stands for the representation of the main character's, Arnie Cunningham's, masculinity. In contemporary American and European culture, hegemonic masculinity serves as the standard upon which the real man is defined. According to critic Rowan Connell, contemporary hegemonic masculinity is a practice that legitimizes men's dominant position in a society. As a sociological concept, it derives from the theory of cultural hegemony by Marxist theorist Antonio Gramsci, which analyzes the power relations among the social classes in a hierarchy of a society. Hence, in the term hegemonic masculinity, the adjective hegemonic refers to the cultural dynamics by means of which a social group claims and sustains a leading and dominant position in a social hierarchy. Nonetheless, hegemonic masculinity embodies a form of social organization that has been sociologically challenged. Connell's notion is built upon two legs, domination of women and a hierarchy of inter-male dominance. Hegemonic masculinity includes a high degree of ruthless competition, an inability to express emotions other than anger, an unwillingness to admit weakness or dependency, and the devaluation of women and all feminine attributes in men, or homophobia. The monster of this novel, then, the 1958 Plymouth Fury, is a representation of toxic or hegemonic masculinity in Connell's terms, okay? In Connell's terms. A particular mystification of manhood that disrupts reality and shows that both men and women alike are powerless. In Christine, in the novel, male power is put in a quandary when the car becomes a fundamental apex in all the triangular personal relationships between characters in the novel. The obvious triangle is the one that narrator and jock Dennis Gilder wants us to acknowledge in the first place. That of his friend Arnie Cunningham, the guy with the glasses, then the hot new girl in high school, Lee Cabot, and, of course, Christine, as the boy names his new over-the-top car. Arnie Cunningham is the stereotypical nerd that nobody associates with hegemonic masculinity, and his relationship with Christine begins as any teenager's newfound freedom or fascination with newfound freedom and power behind, the wheel of a first automobile. But it quickly becomes a self-sacrificing, frightening obsession as the vintage car begins to exhibit abnormal powers. Arnie Cunningham buys the 1958 Plymouth Fury to owner Roland D. Levy, and the sale takes the kid from rags to riches, transforming him into the most popular guy at high school. He gains confidence, he stands against his parents and the school bullies, and even he dates the hot new girl at high school, Lee Cabot. However, the car works in the story as a sexual substitute for Arnie, of a jealous, feminine nature, a selfish lover that drains Arnie's psychological, emotional, and financial bank accounts by placing demands on his time and energy. The kid spends his time customizing the 1958 Plymouth Fury in a garage, and in exchange, as Christine regenerates herself, she also customizes Arnie. Of course, once Christine begins to exhibit abnormal powers, the car splits up the potential relationship between Lee and Arnie, who in his transformation embraces toxic masculinity, encourages his rage and victim mentality, and objectifies his girlfriend. Gender scholar Eve Kosowski-Sedgwick defines heterosexuality as a homosocial transaction of patriarchal culture bound to traffic in women, as the use of women as exchangeable, perhaps symbolic property for cementing the bonds of men with men. Lee falls for Arnie in what seems to be true love. But Arnie's feelings are of a different nature. The boy is torn between his love for Christine and the love for his girlfriend. The car symbolizes his newly found autonomy, whereas the girl gives him security and status. Of course, it's not a surprise then that Lee sees the car as a rival, and Stephen King makes the metaphor that cars are women obvious, specifically in page 2089. In this patriarchal nightmare, however, the metaphor is reversible, following Sedgwick's reasoning. And women become trophies, then, for the winner in the battlefield of manhood. Women become cars in the topical lover triangle, the one that narrator Dennis Gilder seems to regret deeply. The love triangle between Arnie, Dennis, and Lee is viewed from narrator Dennis' point of view as a matter of survival, as something unavoidable. Christine is a car on the surface, but she is also a killing machine that pawns Arnie, ruthlessly kills the bullies that defile them both, and in a fit of jealous rage, attempts to murder Lee. This traumatic event facilitates the love triangle in which the best friend steps in, as Lee becomes a damsel in distress, who turns to Dennis when that troubles come. Dennis is a jock, the natural representation of hegemonic masculinity. He is the football team star, a womanizer looking for sex, and Arnold's protector at high school. Both boys objectify Lee because if Arnie admits in the novel that he asked Lee out not because of herself, but because she was desired by other men, Dennis is also in love with her from the beginning and compares her to a new car. Not very, subtle. After Christine tries to murder Lee, then both Lee and Dennis, team up to destroy the car, and they become romantically involved, while Arnold tries in vain a reconciliation with his girlfriend and his friend, unaware of the breaking point that the incident with Christine has, supposed or for both of them. Lee and Dennis fear the transformation of his friend from a shy nerd into a cocky arrogant, but their primeval fear is Christine and her menace of perpetual doom. If a powerful car then symbolizes the transition from adolescent powerlessness to adult men's sexual power, then only Dennis, masters as the representation of the balanced and experienced man, the powerful sex drive Christine comes to represent with a track named Petunia and the invaluable collaboration of Lee. That is, only the natural real man, the hegemonic male, can subdue the artificial mask of hegemonic masculinity the 1958 Plymouth Fury comes to embody and represent, with a more powerful form of male dominance, literally a bigger vehicle. We cannot see here, but it's that photo. It's like, it's like a truck. It's blasting the car. Sorry, right from the movie. Arnie's relationship with his parents is complicated because she's a bellicose teenager looking for his place in society that obviously rejects his wimpy father and castrating mother. The boy adopts in the novel a surrogate father, Roland D. Levy, the old man that sells him Christine. The transaction of feminized property occurs in a chapter in the novel entitled Arnie Gets Married. Later in the novel, Arnie recalls the transaction as a marriage in a used car lot, the Plymouth Fury as the bride, and Levy's corpse racing to give away the bride. However, in the triangular relationship formed by Roland, Arnie, and Christine, the surrogate paternal figure literally usurps his adopted son to the point of possessing his body, and that's, I think, mainly the main difference with the movie. Levy's story is one of frustration about his life and obsession with Christine, and his story parallels Arnie's to the point of replication. Levy is an illiterate soldier from World War II, frustrated by the fact of not getting higher in society. Christine brings him a new life and a wife and daughter, but not real status or power. His daughter dies inside Christine, and his wife commits suicide, sacrifices Levy must do in order to maintain her cult, Christine's cult. In fact, although Levy dies, Christine is revealed to be a femme fatale, driven by the spirit of her former owner, the Plymouth Fury becoming the medium of his death wish. Sorry. On the wall, once the high school bullies destroy and defecate on Christine. After this execrable act, the killings begin. Levy's aggression possesses Arnie, who reverts first into an older, tougher self, and finally into a primal self, only to die in a suspicious car accident, while Dennis smashes Christine to nothingness. If Christine is Arnie's sense of power, it is only because it's bestowed by Levy, who represents the perverse law of patriarchy that structures the narrative. A perverse law of rage and entitlement that says that in the battlefield of manhood, the one who cannot master his fear of being dominated is destroyed and becomes powerless to the eyes of women and other men. As we have 2 minutes, then I will be, Then the novel is also as a deep tale of love and friendship in the waning days of adolescence, the chronicle of the social and sexual distancing of two childhood friends. In the novel, Dennis remarks this point when Arnie begins to spend time with the car, and he shows jealousy. The relationship between the two boys takes precedence over those with Arnie and the car, because when the car and the girl are not in the equation, what remains is a homosexual panic when the affection between men starts to become eroticized in the novel, and that we can see that in that quote I have from the novel there. So to finish this, sorry, I will be. Then what I want to say is that Christine is a fairy tale, a gothic Cinderella story for boys, where the 1958 Plymouth Fury is a representation of the myth of the American identity as D.H. Lawrence saw it: hard, stoic, and a killer. The car is a projection of the American cultural self, anima for the American Adam. For Annie Cunningham, Christine recovers a prolapsarian vitality and manifest destiny. It's the American dream come true. Christine's odometer runs backward and she regenerates parts. She is the ideal woman of the 50s, having no life of her own and existing only to meet his needs. However, the immortality she offers, and by implication the American dream, is arrested development in the form of a Happy Days rerun and by the way of her radio, which sticks on the Rock Golden Oldie station. The boy is frozen in a state of emotional infancy common to the 50s, in which women were responsible for maintaining the moods of their men, and a bruised male ego was seen as the ultimate tragedy. Christine's burden and undead 50s youth culture means that most of Arnie's travels are in and out of time, a deadly nostalgia trip to a decade in the United States, the 50s, in which the masculine role of the white man in society was hegemonic. That is, men's feelings and desires were all that mattered. A mythical patriarchy created by mass media, whose Edenic garden was trampled on by a fear of radical feminism, represented in this novel by an infernal and demonic machine that haunts the present to signal the disturbing returns of past upon presents, a definition of horror and gothic provided by Fred Boring. In the mythical patriarchy this gothic fairy tale depicts, a mythical patriarchy where men are never questioned and women exist to please them, the American Adams fail with a bang. The myth of the self-made man is the basis for American individualism, and its ethic of hard work, self-control, and material rewards rested on the presumption that everyone could be successful. Gender critic Warren Farrell defines power as control over oneself and argues that the widespread perception of men having inordinate social and economic power is false. In contemporary society, men's weakness is their facade of strength, and women's strength is their facade of weakness. In fact, the epilogue of the novel from 4 years later presents the fairy tale consolation in a burned-out monotone. Arnie and his parents are dead and buried. Christine is a scrap metal, waylaying until she can fully regenerate. And the true Americans, Dennis and Lee, are survivors. However, they have drifted apart and grown old in their prime. In fact, Lee is married to another guy, and Dennis is a limping high school teacher who keeps on having nightmares about Christine. From Dennis and Stephen King's haunted perspective, Christine is a symptom of a cultural phenomenon, a new American Gothic anachronism which continued after the novel's publication in films such as Back to the Future from 1985 or Peggy Sue Got Married from 1986. The 1980s and the 1950s blur into a seamless illusion, the nightmare side of which is the prospect of living an infinite replay. Stephen King makes a critical examination of mass culture, and the dual time frame of the novel reflects his awareness of a dual audience, of writing for adolescents who look back at the mythical 1950s, and also for his own generation as it relives its undead youth culture in its children. And what I wanted to say is that nowadays, Christine seems to be a dated and problematic classic in King's canon, but its central theme still resonates today. Arnie's choice to embrace a victim mentality to fuel his rage is one many people in American and Western culture have made in the midst of COVID-19, systemic oppression or climate change. The desire to make America great again perfectly aligns with Levy's narcissistic worldview of entitlement, and the culture of cancellation and the failed Me Too movement keep fear of radical feminism alive and kicking. American popular culture goes on monetizing nostalgia, and the new adult generation is reliving the undead youth culture of the 80s in their children thanks to the apparently innocuous nostalgic vibe of films such as It from 2017, Ready Player One from 2018, Ghostbusters Afterlife from 2021, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny from 2023, or the Netflix TV series Stranger Things from 2016. The infantilized and violent American society that Stephen King often perceives and denounces in his novels is still there, clinging to a myth that defines its identity but that prevents it from moving forward. American society is living a nightmarish, infinite replay of the same problems, fears, and anxieties that seems to have no end. The author, icon of this anachronistic and globalized American popular culture,